This is CBC Here and Now.
Not everybody in this world gets elected. Not everybody in this world gets a chance to meet their dreams. And I had the chance to do that. My wife told me best one time, she said, George, she said, you're not just the MHA for St. John's East, you're the MHA for everybody. Thanks for having me. And thanks to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and St. John's East for having me too.
Tonight, remembering George Murphy.
A passionate volunteer, politician, gas guru, and family man.
Tributes pour in after his sudden death this weekend.
Here at the Confederation Building, Christy Allen calls herself lucky. She's speaking out for all those who aren't.
I talked to a doctor and I basically pleaded my case.
I'll have the details coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan, filling in for Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Yes, Anthony is on assignment this week. He's on the road collecting some stories, so keep an eye out. He may pop up in your part of the province. Now let's get to tonight's top story. Tributes are pouring in today for former politician and gas price guru George Murphy. He died suddenly this weekend at the age of 58. A memorial for him has been set up outside the Jiffy Cab taxi stand. Murphy worked there for years as a driver, dispatcher, and manager. He also spent years as the face of the consumer group for fair gas prices, telling people when to fill up and get the most value for their money. Murphy served as a provincial politician with the NDP and ran twice as a candidate for the Liberals, but didn't win a seat. He died suddenly this weekend while enjoying a backyard fire with his family. His last public message was this tweet, sent out shortly before he died. The House of Assembly held a moment of silence today in his honor.
George Murphy had a strong voice, a large social conscience, and an even bigger heart. His love of Newfoundland and Labrador was just who he was, and it was the center of everything he did.
His little Jiffy mug is placed where he sits on 5th today, and there's a quote above his computer in his office that I noted this morning. He had handwritten that we should all challenge ourselves to be the hope that someone may need every day, and I thought, what a great message.
It was never about politics. George ran to do the best he could for his constituents. And you know, if you ever see the epitome of the glass half full, that was George Murphy. It's only last Wednesday, a beautiful day we had. I'm leaving here to go to a meeting after the morning session, and I ran into George out in the parking lot, and we talked a little bit, and I said, too nice a day to be in there. And he said, you're right. He said, but isn't it a privilege to be in there? And that meant something to George, because that's what he stood for.
Former NDP leader Jerry Rogers is also remembering George Murphy tonight. They served in the same caucus together. In about 15 minutes, we'll have my conversation with her about his life and legacy.
A new report is calling for better mental health and addiction services. The report says that for patients in this province, a positive experience isn't guaranteed. It's more like a game of chance. Here Now's Enrica Wilhelm has this story.
Mental health and addiction services in the province still need improvement. That's according to Embracing Experiences, a report by the Canadian Mental Health Association published at the beginning of May, which highlights the experiences of 40 people.
A lot of folks who talked about having positive or good experiences with the system actually attributed it to being lucky. They said, well, I had a really great experience and I was very, very fortunate or very lucky to have had that, as opposed to, having full confidence that the system would, truly support them in their needs at the time.
Christy Allen knows the mental health system firsthand. She read the report and sees herself in it.
I know a lot of people who have tried to get a psychiatrist and the doctors have said, try this medication first or you don't qualify. I lucked into a psychiatrist and I felt that way because I had been waiting for one, and I talked to a doctor and I basically pleaded my case and I finally got one. And I feel a little bit guilty because I know that a lot of people don't have the same thing.
Allen has been protesting for better long-term mental health care for the past 6 months. Both Reid and Allen say the pandemic has shown that faster change is possible.
I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's that, change can be transformative and, pretty fast and immediate when, things are very dire and when lives are in great need. So I think that can be said, the same can be said for the mental health and addiction system as well.
Throughout this pandemic, 6 people have died in Newfoundland and Labrador, and that is awful. And we all have said that's 6 too many. 60 people died by suicide in 2020. That is 60 people too many. And you know, I was almost a stat this year. I almost was a stat in 2021. And I think that the government thinks, oh, suicide is just a part of society. Why aren't they addressing that? Why aren't those lives worth saving?
In fact, according to the chief medical examiner, 65 people died by suicide in 2020. This is where the new mental health facility will be built. Christy Allen and other mental health advocates are hoping it's not just going to be a new building, but a new system. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Good evening, I'm Jeremy Eaton, filling in for Ashley Brauweiler for another week. Might be good news for some, maybe not for others. But anyways, there's a lot of weather on the way. Right now there's a severe thunderstorm warning and watch going on in Labrador West. This could bring high winds, heavy rain, and the possibility of some hail. Now further up north in Labrador, there is a chance of snow in Nain. So it's supposed to rain overnight and it could turn into wet snow. The good news is there's going to be no accumulation, but that is on the way. Now as for tomorrow, it's going to be a hot, hot, hot day in central Newfoundland. So you might want to get your sunscreen ready, get your sun hats ready, get your fluids ready, and we're going to talk about how hot it's going to get in central tomorrow.
There are 2 new cases of COVID-19 to tell you about in the province today. Both are in the central area and both are related to travel within Canada. 10 cases in total were announced over the weekend. There are now 70 active cases in the province, and there's a change in alert level to tell you about tonight. It's happening in central Newfoundland. The communities from Lewisport to Summerford are going to return back to alert level 2. That's happening as of midnight tonight. The St. John's Board of Trade kicked off its annual Outlook conference today, and it was done virtually like so many things these days. This year's theme is the road to recovery. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined from Ottawa to field questions about tourism, growing the province's population through immigration, and the future of oil and gas.
We're going to continue to, as a world, rely on oil and gas for a considerable amount of time still, even as we look to transform to a lower and eventually net zero economy. A lot of global investors are trying to pull away from oil and gas, and that's where we have advantages in diversifying, but also in looking for that lower carbon story and that innovation that can still draw in investment.
Not only do we have great proximity to markets, but we have proven how nimble we can be. When I asked the president of ExxonMobil Canada, about our offshore, he said to me, there is no harsher environment that ExxonMobil operates in the world than Newfoundland's offshore. And not only are we really good at it here, but our expertise is asked for all around the world. Who do we think is going to lower emissions and help us rebuild this economy? The same workers who have helped us achieve so much.
Well, mayors of all major municipalities on the Northeast Avalon have released a joint statement about the Terra Nova project. They're calling on the oil industry and government to find a way to keep the field operating. The production vessel has been out of production since 2019. Suncor, which operates the FPSO, says it will decide whether to retrofit or abandon Terra Nova by next week. Last year, they halted plans to retrofit it because of low oil prices and the pandemic.
St. John's City Council is considering closing off part of Kitty Vitty Village to traffic for part of the summer. It's looking at a pedestrian-only zone in the inner gut as a pilot project over a series of weekends. Council is also considering one-way traffic flow from Regiment Road through to Cadet Road. Residences, businesses, and regular users of the inner gut in Kitty Vitty are encouraged to provide feedback on the proposed changes. Letters being mailed out to residents this week, listing several ways to provide that feedback, including several virtual feedback sessions. Meanwhile, the city has approved building a labyrinth in Bowring Park. It will be built near the Southbrook Trail and be part of the Grand Concourse Trail Network. It'll cost about $227,000, and $125,000 of that is coming from a donation.
Red Indian Lake is getting a new name. That's according to the province's Indigenous Affairs Minister. Some people in central Newfoundland won't be pleased, but the PC party leader agrees a balance must be struck between residents and Indigenous leaders. Here now's Mark Quinn has this update.
It's a safe bet that future maps won't refer to this body of water as Red Indian Lake. The province is still accepting public input on the issue of renaming, but Lisa Dempster is strongly suggesting the old name's days are numbered.
I think that our Premier and the Indigenous leaders have been pretty clear that it's 2021 and Red Indian is not really acceptable.
That won't sit well with many people who live near this lake, not far from Buckens. The Progressive Conservative MHA posted a video on Facebook after public consultations were held in the region last month.
Unanimously, the same opinion has been given over and over and over again to the government, and that is the opinion of my people. They do not want Red Indian Lake to be changed. The name should remain Red Indian Lake.
PC leader David Brazel has a different message. He says his party isn't pushing to save the name Red Indian Lake.
There needs to be a collaborative approach to coming up with whatever is in the best interest of our heritage, our culture, and our respect for the Indigenous community in Newfoundland and Labrador, while also respecting the livers in that area who've been there for hundreds of years also.
So what will the new name be? Dempster did give us a hint.
I'm receiving emails from folks that would love to see the name Beathic in the title of the lake.
Once consultations end Friday, the government says it will take some time to consider what it's heard and meet with Indigenous leaders again before a decision is announced. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, following the discovery of 215 children buried on the grounds of a BC residential school, many people across the country have been looking for ways to express their grief.
In Labrador West, one woman has created an art installation to honor those children and all residential school survivors. Freelance video producer Daryl Din brings you her story.
Well, I was feeling really upset, like a lot of Indigenous people and like a lot of Canadians in general, about hearing about the 215 in Kamloops. So I honestly needed an outlet for how I was feeling, so I decided to do this because it just felt natural to me. And growing up, when I felt upset, I usually just did some type of artwork, and this is how it ended up. I think I was really touched by the news as well, not just being Indigenous, but my great-grandmother is actually a residential school survivor as well, and I really look up to her, and this whole news has really made me reflect on my own identity and history as well. So this is really a personal thing on top of it being a community type of mourning. So my grandmother is Jean Crane. She's a respected elder in Goose Bay. She actually just received an honorary doctorate for her knowledge keeping of Labrador and traditional culture, but also expressing art and through like her passion for education as well. She's helping create a MUN campus in Goose Bay right now. So I have a couple pictures of her. This is her at her cabin. She's just knitting on top of her cabin, which I think is cool. And then this is her hauling wood. Well, it took me a really long time to choose a location. I wanted something that was accessible, but also something that was like closer to nature, not in town, and a place that was really peaceful. So I ended up thinking of here on top of Quartzsite, and it actually worked out really well because the hospital and the college are just across the way. And in my opinion, like those are two institutions that should have protected these children and all of the Indigenous children who had to experience residential school. So it kind of worked out. To be honest, I was really worried that people wouldn't support this at all. I was kind of nervous that there wouldn't be any rocks, because in the past when we did get really bad news from Indigenous people and communities, it's kind of, in my opinion, not really taken as seriously as it should be. I know multiple people in multiple towns that are going to bring up rocks. So in Fairmont as well, Wabush and Lab City, a lot of the schools are participating too, which is great. But what I would really like for people to take out of this is to start educating themselves and be conscientious of how you speak to Indigenous people in your life. We have the internet at our fingertips. We have so much information out there, and this is a great opportunity to learn about our history. And yeah, that's what I hope people take out of it, is to do some real learning.
Well, if you're in Labrador West and want to contribute to the installation, you can drop a painted orange rock off at the top of Quartzsite Lake in Labrador City.
At last count, there were over 120 rocks, but Chantel's goal is 215.
This is a type of policy that can help save lives.
A professor is applauding Newfoundland and Labrador's plan for a tax on sugary drinks. He'll lay out the benefits after the weather. Welcome back to Here Now. A group of St. John's teenagers teamed up with Memorial University's Save the Sea Society over the weekend for a community cleanup. Young people are with Fridays for Future, the global movement started by activist Greta Thunberg. Their first stop, collecting litter in the Stavanger Drive area.
So our cleanup today is, of course, to make our trail just a little bit greener, a little bit nicer, but it's mostly just to keep the movement going. We're just trying to get others involved. It's a great way to bring the community together and to meet new people who are also passionate about the environment. Around this area, we'll get a lot of cups from like Tim Hortons and Starbucks, a lot of plastic bags. Plastic doesn't biodegrade, so it will sit here for years, and all it does is damage our environment. Doing actual cleanups doesn't actually do much in terms of the environment when it comes to big changes. We need systematic change in order to actually make any real difference. As a young person, I'm terrified for my future. I want the government to listen to us. I want them to make systematic change. I want less money into oil. I want more money into green initiatives. I want them to hear our voices, to see our plea for our future. The older generations in general like to leave us out of conversations when it comes to the environment. Our futures are directly impacted by what the older generations and what the current government does. If ever there were a time to come together for the environment, I think that time would be now.
This weather update is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. It's time to explore the Great Wide Open. Plan your trip at yourbackyardbeckons.ca.
That was nice. Looks like they collected a lot of garbage, actually, which I guess isn't that surprising.
Not in this town, no.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into the weather, though, the jailbird is back. Now, for the past 3 years, Daisy the duck has been breaking into Her Majesty's Penitentiary to lay her eggs.
Yes. And just look at this. She's done it again. 10 little ducklings, all hatched at HMP. The guards take care of the mama while she's making her nest. They keep her fed, but they're not alone.
So a couple of male ducks that have been named Huey and Dewey also have their eye on her. They fly over the fence from Kitty Vitty Lake to make sure Daisy and her baby ducklings are doing okay. The family waddled out of custody late last month, and things have been going just swimmingly since.
Ba-dum-bum.
Ba, ba, ba. All right, well,
great.
Full disclosure, I didn't write that joke. Everyone's gonna be like, Jeremy definitely wrote that joke. Oh yeah, anyway, so let's take a look at some of the highs today. As you can see, St. John's 16, Terra Nova 18, Badger at 20, 25 in Corner Brook. I'm just going to try to move out of the way here so we can see. Now, Labrador City is sitting at 25, but they are currently under a severe thunderstorm watch. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So that was the highs. Now, currently, it's just a little bit lower. Some of the temperatures are exactly the same, but you're sort of sitting in a pretty mild day. It was a cold start to the day, and I know that there was a frost advisory overnight, and I know a lot of people I saw on social media are posting here in St. John's that they had to turn their heat on today because it was so cool. Now, it quickly warmed up, and as you can see, like it's 16 here in St. John's now, 19 in Badger, and then 15 in Cartwright, 8 in Makovic, 3 in Nain. Now, that's going to be important because that's going to come up again. So we're going to take a look. I got to get out of the way here now so you can see the future. See that future tracker? You see all that rain? That's what's bringing all this rain, with part of this thunderstorm watch there in Labrador West. And could bring up to 30 millimeters of rain. There's a chance of possible hail and also high winds. But if we watch it there, it's just going to move out and move across, and then it's going to bring some more rain into the Cartwright area later today. But as you can see, by tomorrow morning, it's pretty clear. A little bit cloudy there in St. John's. Now tonight in St. John's, it's going to be about 12 degrees, 13 in Ganders, a little bit of rain in St. Anthony, and I guess I forgot to punch the number in because it's not there. But it's 17 in Grand Falls, Windsor, and 18 in Corner Brook. But now, if we move up there, you can see there's going to be a little bit of rain there in Cartwright, 5 millimeters. Happy Valley Goose Bay is going to be about 5 to 10. But I think a lot of eyes here are on Labrador West. So this thunderstorm watch has been in effect almost most of the day. It was recently updated at about 5 p.m. So it's bringing high winds, lots of rain, and it could be P to dime size hail to Labrador West. But it could move into Churchill Falls. Right now, it's sort of the main, according to Environment Canada, the main spot that's being hit now is the Trans-Labrador Highway in between Labrador City and Churchill Falls. but it might not make it all the way to Goose Bay, but it's still going to bring about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain there overnight. Now, if you look up to Nain, it's sitting at 1 degree. It's going to be rainy there overnight, and then that rain is going to change into wet snow. Now, there'll be no accumulation, but it's still not going to look very good. So if we take another look at the future tracker here, you can see as it moves in, so this is Tuesday morning, it'll still be a lot of cloud cover, but not a lot of rain, which is good. And it's, as you can see, it slowly moves out. There's not many systems moving in, and that's good news because tomorrow is going to be a very hot day here. On the island, it's going to be a very hot day. So as you can see, it's 26 degrees in St. John's, 15 in Ferryland. But take a look at Bonavista and Clarenville. They could hit up to 30 degrees. Marystown could hit to 26. And as you move across Central, you can see 29 in Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, 26 in Twillingate. And on the West Coast, even 18 in Burgeo, 16 in Port aux Basques. Now you can see those rain clouds in Stephenville, the Humber Valley, and Corner Brook and Grossmoor and Bayvert. That's just a chance of showers tomorrow morning. It's not going to be a lot of rain. There's not going to be a lot of accumulation. So that's why there's the sun and the clouds. But you can expect to see a little bit of precipitation tomorrow morning. And then if we move up, look at that, 20 degrees in Mary's Harbor. Cartwright, now Labrador is not going to be as warm as the island, but you can see there will be a bit of rain, 13, 10, 4, 9, and 5 in Nain. Now, I wanted to put these in real quick. This is humidex. This is not temperature. There's a really complex equation to figure out humidex, and I do not understand it. Maybe Ashley can explain it sometime. But it could feel as warm as 34 degrees in Gander, and Bonavista, Clarenville is also going to be 30. Grand Falls winds are 30. Stephenville, Deer Lake, Corner Brook, they'll all be around 27 with the humidex. So it's going to be a nice hot day there tomorrow. So we're going to have more in the long-term forecast because Tuesday is going to be nice, but what about the rest of the week? I'll be back later to tell you all about it.
The provincial government's plan to bring in a tax on sugary drinks is designed to help people make healthier choices, but could it actually save lives? David Hammond is a professor at the University of Waterloo, and he's written a report looking at the impact of these taxes on sugary drinks. Professor Hammond, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Peter.
So the province wants to add 20 cents a litre onto sugary drinks. What did your analysis show about how that could change people's behavior?
Well, the bottom line is that this is a type of a policy that can help save lives. So we have a real problem with obesity and overweight in Canada. About 2/3 of us, prevalence of obesity and overweight among kids has tripled in the last several decades. And most people aren't aware about the link between obesity and heart disease, cancer. These are some of the leading causes of death in Canada. So the bottom line is that when you increase the price of pop and sodas and sugary drinks, people consume less. And that's a good thing in terms of reducing added sugar and added excess energy intake.
We've heard concerns that one of the reasons people may be buying things like pop is because they are the low-cost option, and if you add a tax, they're still cheap compared to some of the healthier alternatives, so people are still going to drink them, they're just going to have less money to spend.
Certainly, I think that speaks to having a tax or price increase that's large enough to be meaningful for people. But you know, it's not a hypothetical. What Newfoundland's proposing to do has been done in countries like Mexico. It's been done in the United Kingdom. And what they found there is two things. The industry actually changes by reducing the sugar in its drinks. That's a win-win. And people consume less sugar. Now, it's not that we stop drinking beverages. It's that people tend to shift to the untaxed options, which are things like bottled water and unflavored milk. So that very much is a win-win.
You did this analysis 4 years ago. Why do you think that governments haven't acted on it?
Well, that's a really good question. And look, there's strong opposition from the industry. Most times when provinces or the federal government have tried to bring in big new nutrition policies that would actually make a difference, whether that's easier labeling on the front of packages or measures like this, there's a big industry and they advocate very strongly for their interests. So, you know, I think Newfoundland's probably taken a look at it and said, this is a good public health measure. It's a good economic measure. And I will say that, look, nobody likes taxes. Nobody likes paying more. But we know that the public supports these types of measures if the government reinvests it in things that matter. So whether that's roads or schools or hospitals, or my understanding what Newfoundland has done is that, you know what, they're going to invest $1 million in child nutrition programs. Now, if you pair this type of measure with something like feeding kids healthy food in schools, most people are very supportive of this.
I want to ask you about your analysis. How do you draw this link between something like a sugary drink tax and saving lives? Walk me through that.
Right. So, it's actually quite a sophisticated model in terms of you estimate how many people are going to change and what beverages they'll switch to. So, from Coke or Pepsi or soda to other things. We figure out what the impact is likely to be in terms of change of their weight status and based on sugar intake and energy. And then we have very good data about the risk of excess weight and things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. And then you layer on top of that the financial costs that we pay. So this isn't just sort of a public health measure. We're talking about billions of dollars in healthcare costs saved from these types of measures federally.
When you look at the number of calories that people take in, the amount from sugary drinks compared to everything else, even things like fast food and other unhealthy options, is still fairly small. So how do you see these sorts of big changes even when it's still a small part of our overall diet?
Added sugar is a major contributor to energy intake. So the average Canadian child consumes somewhere about 30 teaspoons of sugar per day. That's 30 sugar cubes. And added sugar from things like beverages is a big part of it. Now, we often think about, oh, Coke and Pepsi, but actually we're getting sugar from beverages like fruit drinks. These are things that masquerade as, oh, it must be some kind of fruit juice, it's healthy. In fact, those have a profile that looks very much like Coke and Pepsi in terms of the amount of sugar in them. So actually, we've shifted the types of beverages we have to fruit drinks and energy drinks and sport drinks. But it is an important contribution to our energy and sugar intake at the end of the day.
Professor Hammond, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, as we heard earlier, it's a sad time for many people in this province who are grieving the loss of George Murphy. He died suddenly Saturday night at the age of 58. Murphy was perhaps best known for his volunteer work, tracking gasoline prices every week, helping people save money by predicting price changes at the pumps.
If OPEC does cut next month, right off the bat, I can see problems with distillate inventory, which may include heating oil.
He was also a well-known member of the taxi industry in the city of St. John's.
I was just as happy driving a cab as what I was being a politician.
Murphy was also an NDP MHA who represented St. John's East in the legislature from 2011 to 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your family essentially grows from what you have in your own household to all of a sudden 14,500 people that you got to look after.
He was known as a passionate politician who wore his heart on his sleeve and wasn't afraid to show his emotions.
I had the trust of Newfoundland and Labrador in my hands. People knew me for who I was. You know, I did show my human side. That may or may not have been a mistake. I don't think that it was a mistake. Not everybody in this world gets a chance to meet their dreams, and I had the chance to do that. The people of St. John's East gave me that chance, and kind of forever in their debt.
He most recently ran as a Liberal in the 2019 and 2021 provincial elections. But above all other things, George Murphy would have called himself a family man, a father and a husband.
Family came out on top. Family was the winner.
His friend and former political colleague joins me now. Jerry Rogers, first off, my condolences.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. It's a huge shock to so many of us and such a great loss.
For sure. I'd like to start with the last thing we heard from George Murphy. He posted a tweet just before he passed on Saturday night. He was outdoors enjoying a fire, and he posted a photo and wrote 3 simple words. He wrote, "Nothing like it." How did you feel when you saw that and learned of his death?
Well, of course, I was shocked, but now a few days later and on reflection, there was nothing like George. But also how he loved to gather people around his fire pit. And you know, a lot of people don't know that George was a musician, and he loved music, and he loved gathering people together.
Oh, how can you tell me it's over?
I imagine that his last time was pretty happy, that he was pretty content, because it's what he loved to do.
We are seeing a huge reaction to his passing on social media, phone calls to Crosstalk today. You were the guest there. We heard a statement by the Premier in the House of Assembly. What was it about George Murphy, the person, that made such an impression on people?
George was so very open. He was open to people, and he cared so deeply. And you know, when we hear so much of what people are saying or writing, it sounds like platitudes, but it's the truth about this incredible man. And George was an ideal politician because he loved people. And everybody talks about what a great constituency MHA he was, but the other part about George was that he loved the House of Assembly. He loved digging into legislation. And the reason his work in that area was so good was because he loved people, because he was so open to people. He would hear their stories. He would go to their homes. He would go to community group meetings. And it's then he would see where there was gaps in legislation, where there were gaps in programs. And then he would say, we have to deal with this. We have to deal with this on a legislative issue, on a legislative level, and we have to deal with this on a policy level. So his work was so holistic in that the political legislative work that he wanted to do sprang from his deep connection, not only to his own constituents, but to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
And so many people relied on him every week when they were wanting to know if the price of gasoline was going to be going up at the pumps. I think he made a real difference in that regard, helping people save money every week.
Yeah, you know, he was really concerned about that. He was concerned about the price of milk. He was concerned about the price of housing, the price of bread. And somebody on Twitter today tweeted that they were trying to assess really how much money they saved by listening to George's analysis of the price of gas. And they said that from listening to him over a period of a number of years, that George probably saved them about $1,200. And I think George would have loved to have heard that. But he was concerned about the average person and how people were making ends meet.
He had so many different roles, but what do you think his legacy will be in this province?
George was a big guy. He was 6 feet, 6 inches tall. And he had a strength and a determination, but an incredible gentleness. And he was so non-judgmental. His openness, his very being was expansive and open to all kinds of people. And I think part of his legacy as well is about how important it is to listen, how important it is to listen with the intent to really hear, and how important it is for all of us to connect and to work together. And he did that well. He did that well, and there's nothing like George.
Well, Jerry Rogers, I thank you so very much for paying tribute to George Murphy and for sharing some of your stories about him. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can be really a nice person and still be racist.
A year ago, thousands of people came out to rally in support of Black Lives. After the break, organizers explain what's happened with the movement in the months since. Well, they wanted to create change and get people talking about racism in this province. So a year ago, Black Lives Matter NL planned a rally. Thousands came out in support. The Black community shared their experiences with racism. There were speeches and performances and hope for change. Precious Famalusi and Raven Khadija helped organize the event, and they're here to talk about the impact the Black Lives Matter movement has had in this province. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Let's go back to last year. Why did you decide Newfoundland and Labrador should have a rally? Precious Famalusi, let's start with you.
We believed that at the time it was time to have the really important conversation of how racism looks in our province. We always had that, oh, Newfoundland people are nice, and a lot of that transpired to thinking there is no racism in this province because, oh, surely people here are nice, but there is racism that exists. So we were like, it was time to bring that to the forefront on ways we can actually address change and make change.
And Raven Khadija, what do you remember feeling at that time when you were organizing the rally last year?
Well, I'm going to be very frank with you. I remember feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of pain, a lot of fear, a lot of everybody. I think at that point in time, every Black person around the world literally saw the systemic oppression, the killing of a Black man across their screens like anything else. And I think it made the entire world pause and stop. And I think that I still haven't watched the entire film. I haven't watched the entire clip. It's too much. And I think a lot of Black people feel that way. I think at that point in time, the entire Black community, no matter if we were in Newfoundland, if we were in the Caribbean, if we were in Africa, if we were in the US, we felt like we needed to stand in solidarity. And everyone really felt that way. And we needed to put this together in a way that really was safe, because that was during COVID.
There was a huge turnout at that event. Precious Famalusi, were you expecting that kind of turnout? Were you expecting that many people to come out?
To see that many turnout was it was very emotional for everyone on the team, to be honest, because it was great to see people come out and support, but it also showed that we need to have the conversation more, and it showed that there was more need for Black Lives Matter Newfoundland, and that's why we exist today.
Since this movement started and this conversation started, what have you noticed around the conversation around anti-Black racism?
I really believe that the actual topic, the mode of how we look at the conversation has changed, because instead of looking at racism as the systemic killing of Black people, we actually had the conversation of what systemic racism looks like to Black people in this province. It's not the same, but it's still just as harmful. And that, I think, was progress in that regard. And like my predecessor said, Precious said, we're trying to say, okay, yes, there has been progress, but we still have a lot to do. One of the points in that is whenever we do events, whenever we do classes within the school, it's teachers having to reach out to us on their own and request us as speakers. I personally feel like anti-Black racism and Black history in Canada itself is very rich, and that should be a part of the curriculum here. And I don't understand why it's not. I feel like if this is something that children are seeing, that they are experiencing, that they have very strong views, and they're very vocal about what anti-Black racism is, what they're perfectly capable of understanding what is bias, what is privilege. They're very, very knowledgeable. And I think like we need as a province to look at how we can tap into that to really make the change that will actually be sustainable, not just for now.
So it kind of starts in the classroom, educating students about racism. But what more do you think still needs to happen here? Precious, I'll go back to you for that one.
I think in terms of what needs to happen here, more corporations need to do more anti-Black racism training and have the conversation more. It's good to be an ally, but not just an ally for the showcase. What are you actually doing to empower um, your Black employees? What are you just putting them? Are you giving them a space to elevate them to higher roles in your organization? Because what we find a lot of times in organizations that a lot of people they hire BIPOC people, like a Black indigenous people, but we don't see that in their leadership. We only see that in their, let's say, in people doing the customer service, people doing the lower hierarchy job. But when it comes to leadership, we don't see that sort of representation. So it's really important to ask yourself the question is, what sort of representation does our leadership have? Is there people qualified for this same role um, as well that we are not giving them the same opportunity to? It's always about having conversation whose voices is not being heard in this room and who's not being represented in this room. So those are important conversations to have. We also believe that the government should really find a way to implement making um, anti-Black racism training compulsory.
What we have that is it's really a Newfoundland and Labrador problem, especially a Newfoundland problem, is that we have a very large group of people who are extremely knowledgeable, who have many degrees, but they don't, and we don't have the access, the knowledge, or the know-how to get into certain places, certain businesses that are not just in the, let's say, the public service or consumer services or the home care services. And that is an issue that should be looked at, because what are corporations doing to make sure that the people who are coming from different countries and settling and becoming part of this community, are we aware and do we know, and are you all making sure we have a space in your organization that we can not only become part of management, but actually be able to get into the door to be a part of those conversations?
Okay, and this is an important conversation. Raven, Khadija, and Precious Famalusi, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you very much for giving us this platform.
Time now for a look at the long-range forecast. Jeremy is back for that. So tomorrow looking amazing.
It's looking hot AF, as the kids would say. And from my understanding, the AF stands for hot as Florida, or so I've been told. So,
right.
Before we're looking at temperatures, Peter just did some quick on-the-fly research. The average temperature would be around 14 degrees at this time of year, and in St. John's, we're going to be 10 degrees above that.
Wow.
So, will the hot time stay? I'm going to throw it out. Thanks for doing that. So here comes the future tracker. As you can see, there's a bit of rain clouds there off near the north coast of Labrador. So that's going to be tomorrow night, and then that's going to move off into the ocean, and then there's a little bit of cloud cover there, but it's going to be a pretty clear day here Wednesday in the city of St. John's and across the island of Newfoundland. Now you can see there is a lot of rain coming in here through Labrador, through the Big Land. There's pockets of rain that'll make its way down there. There's actually a lot of rain, and it's there's not a lot of amounts yet, but on Thursday it'll probably be a wet day on the island. Wednesday it will be a bit of a wet day there in Labrador. So the look ahead. So Wednesday is going to be 17 degrees in St. John's. We're going to be like 21 degrees down there in Marystown. Grand Falls winds will be at 21. St. Anthony will hit 11. But there's not a lot of rain clouds. There's a little bit there. That's that system that we looked at. Will bring some rain to Labrador City, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Wabash, and Churchill Falls area. But if we take a look at this, see, I'm standing right in front of it, but I'm just trying to hide you, just trying to hide it from you so you don't have to see it. But there were some blue pockets in there. And if you look at the future tracker, right there. See, the blue means snow. That's bad. We don't want that. That's bad. So there's a few pockets that'll pop down through Labrador there on Thursday. But as you can see, it's going to be a very rainy day across the island on Thursday. As you can see, 12 degrees in St. John's, 13. But the good news, if you're up in Labrador, that while we'll be getting rain on the island, in the Big Land, it'll probably be not a large day, as they would say, but at least it won't be raining and there won't be any thunderstorms. Fingers crossed. So as I was saying, we were talking about the blue, and see, that's kind of concerning just down here. You can see there's blue, and then there's a mix. So it's going to be wet Thursday overnight. But that's Thursday. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. So for now, we're just going to worry about tomorrow, which is going to be hot. But there is some systems. There are a few systems moving through, and there will be a little bit of rain come along. But the good news is that if we can just get through this future tracker, and we'll get to, there we go. Let's look at the 5-day forecast. So as you can see, there's going to be a little bit of rain hanging around. But for the east, like we're looking, there's a lot of sun there. As I said, Tuesday will be warm. That rain will come in on Thursday, and then the weekend, the sun should come back out. Now, if we move across there to central, it's the same sort of thing. Now, as I was saying, that 29 degrees that you can see with a bit of rain, that's only going to be showers in the morning, but that should go away. And the humidex is going to be pretty high in central as well. And if we look at western Newfoundland, a little bit of rain there tomorrow, but that's not a big deal. Now, if you look at Thursday, that's the rain we talked about. But again, the weekend, we're looking at sun as well. And then if we go up into eastern Labrador, a few gray clouds, but as well, the weekend looks like it could be sunny, and everybody's working for the weekend these days. And in western Labrador, you're sitting at, you're looking at some sun there as well, a little bit of clouds. So it should all be good. Now, let's take, I didn't edit this properly. The banner's supposed to come up later. But this is our picture of the day. It was sent in from Les Snow, and this is a picture of beautiful Hopedale. And we're always happy to get your weather photos. And as always, I've already forgotten. What is it, NL Weather?
NL Photos.
At cbc.ca?
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, send it to us. Oh, see, there we go. Right there. What an idiot I am. NL Photos at cbc.ca. Send them to us anytime. I don't know why the future tracker's playing. Gary, get me out of this, would you? Please, save me. Appreciate it. So thanks, buddy. So as you can see, send us those pictures.
Yeah.
It's going to be warm tomorrow.
Yeah, looking great.
And that's all that matters.
I'm voting that we have the show outside tomorrow, Carolyn.
Wouldn't that be great?
Good luck.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I will be reporting live from outside where it's nice and warm, and I want to wear shorts.
And sunglasses.
I have a few demands.
I already have my sandals. I won't show you my sandals, but I already have my sandals on. And my shorts as well.
Well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching.
See you tomorrow.
See you guys. And girls. Sorry.